I'm so glad you guys are here. You got to be out, you know? It's Thursday night. It's a school night, but you guys came out. Yeah, you have to. You got to go out. You got to live it up, right? You got to live it up. Yeah. Because it's almost over, isn't it? Not the show, but the world. That's wrapping up, isn't it? Day by day. Every day hotter than the day before. Some days you can't breathe the air. We had that in New York. We had the Canadian wildfire air come in. There's all this fire somewhere else, and the smoke came in, and we couldn't breathe the air for the day. There was a day I had to put on a mask to go outside because the air was poison. There was a day I had to put on a mask to go outside to put my recycling in the proper trash can. And it just felt too late, you know? Like, I was like, yeah, that ought to do it right there. Those 6 empty White Claw cans ought to pivot us in the right direction. The world was doomed until Zoltan put the aluminium in the proper receptacle. That's what they'll say in the documentaries. That's how you know you're watching a good documentary, by the way. They say the word aluminium. That's a high-end documentary. That's a Netflix setup. You hear aluminum? That's a YouTube video you're watching. Don't skip the ads. They need the revenue. But yeah, the world's ending. But at least we get to see it. That's kind of cool. All right? We got front row seats for the end. It's kind of exciting. Except it isn't. It's not that exciting. I thought it would be more, whoa, but it's just more, oh. Like, I thought it would be exciting. I grew up in the 90s where they had, like, disaster films, like Deep Impact. Remember Deep Impact? It's like a comet coming for the Earth. Everyone knew for a week. People lost their mind. Like, Elijah Wood got married at 12. He stole a dirt bike. He's knocking off bucket list things. That's how I thought the Earth would end. There's a comet coming for the Earth. Everyone knew for a week. People would freak out. Then it hits the ocean. A 100-foot tidal wave comes. My wife and I go out to the beach to watch it come in and have one last moment, one last makeout sesh, just to just get in there and then just and just get wiped out. But apparently it's not going to be that exciting. It's going to happen slowly every day. We're just going to go outside, just whoo, right? And we'll argue all the way to the end, won't we? We'll argue with each other as the water levels rise. We'll just be like, so, who are you voting for in November? Oh! That's how we're gonna write it out. It's a joke about the end, but I said it with a smile, so it's still pretty positive. So I guess the moral of the show is just live it up, man. Live it up, because it's almost over. Yeah, live it up. That's what I've been doing. I've been living it up. I recently started stealing. That's what I started doing. I don't know if you've ever stolen anything, but it's pretty sweet. Like, you know when you pay for something and feel nothing afterwards? You're like, yes, this is mine now. But when you steal, you're like, oh! It's exhilarating. You feel like you're getting away with something. I haven't stolen anything up until this year. Then I stole something. I'm like, I never want to pay for anything ever again. I stole a bottle of water at the airport. That's what I stole. Stole a bottle. Yeah, well, you know. I'm just getting started, you know? I'm going to step it up a notch. But yeah, I get dry mouth at the airport. I don't know what they do at the airport, but I get parched out there. And I wanted to buy a bottle. I was going to pay for the bottle of water, and they had 2 lines. They had self-checkout line that had nobody, and then there was the human being, which had 10 people. And I waited for the human being line, because that's the only way to fight the robots, right? You got to wait for the human being. So I waited in line for the human being, had my credit card ready, and I got all the way up to the front. And the lady saw my credit card. She goes, ooh, you paying with credit card? I'm like, yeah. She goes, I can only take cash. If you're paying with credit card, you got to do self-checkout. And I was like, oh, all right. And then I just walked out with my bottle of water. And I never felt more alive. That was exhilarating. I felt like Brad Pitt in Ocean's 11. I was like, get me a suit and a shrimp cocktail immediately. This is good. And then I got on a flight to Milwaukee like a fugitive. You're never gonna catch me now. The airport's a great place to steal from. It is. If you're looking to get into the world of thievery, start at the airport. Great place to steal from. You steal whatever you want. Nobody cares. Nobody cares at the airport. The airport's this weird place where they have a lot of security and then nothing after that. They made a big mistake. They front-loaded all their security. They should have spread them out a little, but they didn't. They put them all in the front. And once you break that wave, there's nothing after that. I'm telling you, next time you're at the airport, go steal like a little I Heart San Diego fridge magnet and just walk out. Just walk. Don't even hide it. Hold it up as you leave. I promise you nobody's coming. Nobody's coming. That dude with the badge, you got liquids? That guy's not coming. Not coming. That dog with the bulletproof vest for no reason? Not coming. You just get to leave like a fugitive. I love the bomb-sniffing dog with the bulletproof vest. He's my favorite piece of TSA security. Because I fly every week. I see this dog every week. And I wonder sometimes, I'm like, is it a bomb-sniffing dog? Or is it ever just a dog? You know? Because I have 2 pets at home, and they have to see the vet a lot. And I'm like, how many bomb-sniffing dogs can there be? Is there ever a day when they show up and someone's like, hey, where's the dog? I'm like, oh, he's getting his teeth cleaned today. He ain't coming in. And then some other guy's like, well, what are we going to do? And they're like, I guess we're just not going to have a bomb-sniffing dog. And then like a third guy's like, I got a dog. You want to just put the vest on this dog? I think they do that way more than we think. I honestly do, because I fly every week, and at JFK, they make you go 2 by 2 with a stranger if you fly by yourself, which I do a lot. And you got to go 2 by 2, and you walk by the dog. And this one time I went, and the dog barked at the dude in front of me. It was a big deal. Just, arr, 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 arr. And everyone's like, ho, ho, ho! We got one! And then the dude with the leash was like, what? No, 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 go ahead. You're good. You're good. And everyone's like, oh my God, that's just a dog. That wasn't a special dog at all. That guy had jerky in his backpack, and the entire operation came crumbling down. We're all screwed. So yeah, live it up. That's what I've been doing. It was a big year. I moved to New York this year, which was, yeah, it's a weird one to clap, I know. Every time I tell people that we moved to New York from San Diego, everyone's like, well, why? Why would you do that? Do you not have eyes? What happened? And it's like, I always wanted to live in the big city. Like, I watched Muppets Take Manhattan when I was a kid. And I was like, that looks fun. I got to give that a try. So we've been out there since April, and we're not fitting in at all. I just don't have the vibe for it. That's a real city. We're real city people. Everyone's out there. They always look like they have something to go to. And I'm just out there like a San Diegan, just looking to kill some time. And that's not the vibe for that city. People leave their house in New York like, yeah, we're gonna chase some goals. People leave their house in San Diego like, what do you want to do today? And I just don't fit that city. That city's aggressive. You can't come in all, I can't help it. I smile too much. That's not a smiling city, but I can't help it. I was raised here in the sunshine. I just have vitamin D flowing out of my gills. I can't help it. Sometimes I'll just leave the house for no reason. Just feel some joy, And it's not it's not good, because everyone else in New York has a serious don't mess with me face. They got just a brooding, like annoyed, but smart, but angry, but perturbed, just like an author that doesn't know how to finish their novel. Like that kind of, how do I kill the protagonist? Like that kind of energy. And I don't have that. I just look like I love my mother. And that's not the kind of energy you want to bring to that, to that city. It's pretty aggressive out there. So I'm trying my best, trying not to smile, trying not to react to noises. That's also big in a big city. If you walk down the street and you hear someone go, hey, that's not for you. That's a really tough lesson to learn, all right? Every time I leave my house, I'd go, hey! I'd be like, huh? You know what happens? I make eye contact with the last person on the planet I've ever wanted to make eye contact with. And I'm like, oh, hot damn. All right. And it happens all the time. I make eye contact. You're not supposed to make eye contact in that city, but I can't help it. I can't help it. If you got a weird face, I'm gonna look. If you got a funny hat or a different haircut, I'm gonna take a look. And you're not supposed to. You're just supposed to. But I can't help it. It happened on the subway. My wife and I were on the subway, and there was a wild woman sitting in front of us. That's not the technical term, but you know what I'm talking about. I'm always afraid to use the technical term because we always change the technical term, and I don't want to accidentally say the old term. So you know what I do? I actually try to guess what the next term's gonna be. You guys ever do that? Try to be extra ahead of it? Yeah, so I made eye contact with this woman. She was mentally spectacular. That's what I've been going with. I actually think that could be the next term. I don't know if anyone's in charge. Write that vote in. But I made eye contact with this woman. As soon as I did, I'm like, oh no. And I broke away. I looked down. I was like, oh, that was so bad. Never look up again. But then we made eye contact again. Second time, definitely my fault. Definitely my fault. I thought I'd catch her on a turn or something, and I look up, boom. And now we're locked in, and I'll never forget that she had earbuds in with the cord, which is always a bad move. And I remember she locked in, and she popped one of her earbuds out, and she goes, boy, do I have a treat for you. That is the most terrifying sentence I've ever heard in my entire life. Boy, do I have a treat for you. I grabbed my wife's leg. Thankfully, there was a woman next to her, and I think it was her job to do this. She went, no, sweetheart, remember? We said we're not going to do that anymore. And she's like, oh, I forgot. And she put her earbud bag in, and I'm like, thank God for you right now. You're a hero. Because if you weren't here, I would have just been stuck there with her going, boy, do I have a treat for you. No! Please, God, no. It's hard out there. I don't know if you follow the news. It's a pretty violent city. A lot of people get stabbed on the subway. People get pokey down there, which I follow the news. It's very scary. But I'm always happy anytime there's a stabbing when they say that an argument led to the stabbing, because I know that will never be me. You know, I will, like, if someone comes up to me and goes, I'll just be like, you know it, you know? That'll never escalate to a stabbing. Agreeing if you agree, you will never be stabbed. Did you know? I know. I've been trying to tell you, yeah? That guy never gets stabbed, and that's who I am. I'm always happy when an argument led to the stabbing, because that makes sense, right? Two people had a disagreement. Like that. That makes sense. Two people had a disagreement, led to a stabbing, as it should, you know? But what scares me is the random ones. Like in the summer, we had a random slasher. This guy would just get you without the preamble. There was no buildup. He would get you while you were going up the stairs. He'd get the back of your legs like a little Subway Zorro. He'd give you a little engraving as you were going to work, which is terrifying. You can't even defend yourself. You're vulnerable. You're going upstairs. How do you defend? Hey! You can't. There's no defense for... I don't care what kind of jiu-jitsu you know. You don't train for the stairs, all right? And I'm out there doing comedy every night, and my wife's scared, and she goes, watch out for the slasher. And I'm like, yeah, I'll try, you know? And she's like, you should take a knife with you. I'm like, yeah, that ought to even the score. Hey! Yeah, let me cut my own Achilles tendon. This would be amazing. Save him the trouble. Yeah, I was thinking about it. Like, for me to have, even if I had a knife, it's not good, because that guy's gonna go first, you know? And in a knife fight, I really gotta go first. I've thought about it. I can't go second in the knife fight. You gotta give me the lead on this. But that guy's gonna have the lead. That guy woke up that morning going, I'm gonna stab someone today. And then hypothetically, he sees me. He's like, I'm gonna stab that guy. I don't know he thinks that. I got my headphones in, listen to a podcast going, yeah, maybe I will sign up for Blue Apron. That sounds like a good idea. My wife and I can cook together on Tuesdays. And he just comes in, no, I wasn't ready, you know? Gotta go first in the knife fight. It's a big year, though. We're fitting in. It was a big year. Big year, moved to New York. We also got married. Got married this year. Yeah. Big year. Big year. Got married. This is my wife Emma's first marriage, and this is my second marriage. So a lot of pressure on me, you know? Like, if this doesn't work out, I'll know for a fact it was me all along. Right? Anyone can have one divorce, but two, you gotta start looking in that mirror going, all right, how am I chewing? Because I am running these women off. But I think we're doing good, you know? I think we're doing good. We've been married since May. I think we got it figured out. I think one of the important things we do is that if we get into a stupid argument and we realize we're in a stupid argument, we'll call it out and then laugh at each other. And I think that's important, because if you're in a relationship, you're going to get into a stupid argument. So once you realize it, just laugh at your significant other. I mean, make sure they also know it's a stupid argument. Otherwise, that could lead to a stabbing. But just realize it. Like, one of my wife and I's favorite activities is we like to go to open houses for houses we can't afford. Yeah, it's a great activity. Isn't that the best? Yeah, you walk into a house, you're like, we can't afford that. Let's see what's going on. We went into a house, I remember, it was listed for $1.7 million. And I don't have that. And we went in and we actually got into an argument over which room we'd turn into the office in a house we can't afford. And I mean a full-on argument, like, what are you, an idiot? You can't put the office here, it's gonna ruin the flow of the layout. And we was heated, but my wife caught it first. She was like, wait a second, I forgot, you drive a Honda Fit. And I was like, oh yeah. And I still owe $3,000 on it. I don't think we're in the market for the $1.7 million house. So just laugh at each other, man. We do enough things together, enough things apart. We keep it nice and balanced. Like right now, we're on a couples diet. We're doing a diet together. We're on the portion control diet. That's the one we're on. If you don't know what the portion control diet is, that's where you, whatever you want, you just eat a lot less of it. You just eat this much instead of this much, just this much. If you've never been on the portion control diet, the most important part is once you're done with your really small meal, for the next half hour afterwards, out loud, you say how that was the perfect amount of food. It's key to the day. It doesn't work if you don't do that. You just walk around going, that was the perfect amount of food. That was the excellent amount. I'm not weighed down by too much sustenance or joy. This is the exact level I should be at. That's what you say on the outside. On the inside, you're like, that was just enough to piss me off, is what that was. That was just enough to get all my salivary glands going, and then it ended. But that's why it's important to do a couples diet with two of you, because eventually one of you is going to crack. One of you, usually around day 3, day 4, one of you is going to just be like, I'm going to jam a Hershey bar up my ass, I think. And that's when the other person comes in and goes, no, baby, don't. Just split it with me. Just split it with me. This diet was a horrible idea. Let's eat a traditional, you know? So we got to figure it out. Yeah, we got married in Italy. That's where we got married. We eloped to Italy. That's what we did. Yeah. Yeah, if you guys don't know what an elopement is, that's when you realize your wedding would be so much more fun if no one came. That's what an elopement is. That's when you sit down and you crunch the numbers and you're like, oh my God, if we don't have to feed 150 people, we could go to Italy. And then you weigh the love of your friends and family against a trip to Italy, and we're like, au revoir, I think. Which, that's not even Italian, but it doesn't matter, because they're not coming anyway. So we went out to Italy. Got married out there. I loved it. Italy's a great country. Food, amazing, of course. People, vibrant. Everybody. Best smelling people I've ever seen. Everyone slathered in cologne. Every dude. And you know what else I noticed? No depression in Italy. And I think it's related. I never saw a single dude in Italy like, I just don't have it today. I don't have it. Every dude was like, oh yeah. It's Nico's time to shine. Everyone was pumped, and I think it's the cologne. I think cologne is aromatherapy for confidence. If you ever second guess yourself, you remember, wait a second, I smell delicious. The world is my oyster, you know? Loved Italy. People are vibrant in the streets, mixing it up. I watched an old Italian couple argue in downtown Florence, right in the middle of everybody, in each other's faces, just ra-ta-ta-ta, giving it to each other. That's my Italian, by the way, all right? You didn't come from my impressions. That's about as close as you get non-Italian. But just ra-ta-ta-ta, and he's like ra-ta-ta-ta, and she's like ra-ta-ta-ta. And then I remember he grabbed and shook her a little bit, and her sunglasses fell off, and she broke away. She goes ra-ta-ta-ta, and ran down a little street. Don't get me wrong, that was domestic violence, but it was in Italian, so it was beautiful. You know what I mean? It was like we were watching the opera or something, and I was like, no, honey, don't call the cops. There's a second act, all right? There's gonna be a moral to this story. We're gonna figure it out. It's been good. Yeah, we've been married since May. We gotta figure it out. I've heard this quote from a lot of married people. Oh, my significant other makes me a better person. I don't know if either of us are doing that for the other. I think my wife and I make each other one normal person, if that makes sense. Like, between us, there's a normal human being right here. Separately, I don't think we should be allowed to vote, quite honestly. But together, give us one vote. Who can we hurt? You know? What I mean by that is, like, we balance each other out. There's some things she's bad at that I'm good at. There's some things I'm horrible at that she's all right at. And there's, like, a normal human being right here. Like, my wife, for example, is a hypochondriac. Every morning, she wakes up with a brand new disease. Brand new. It's very exciting in our household. We'll just wake up, and she'll be like, oh, my God, do you hear that? What is that? And I'm like, huh? And she'll hold it to my ear. Do you hear that? What is that? And I'm like, I don't know. She's like, was that there yesterday? And I'm like, I don't know. We didn't do this yesterday. I don't have yesterday's wrist noises cataloged in my head to compare to today's wrist noises. And she gets annoyed at me. She's like, oh, you never listen. And she storms off. And then after like 2 hours of Googling, she comes back. She's like, yeah, it's wrist cancer. And I was like, that's the most common form. So I get that. It's been really going around this year. So that's who my wife is. My wife's a bit of a hypochondriac. And me, I've had a pain in my left testicle for 6 years. And I've just been riding that out. You see what I mean? There's like a normal human being right here. Between this, there's a normal person right here. She's over here going, oh my God. And I'm over here like, yeah. Everything's fine. That's fine. Just a little bit of humidity today. That's all that is. A little too much humidity. Don't worry, I will explain the testicle. I wasn't just gonna put that out there for you guys. Here's why I never got it checked out. I have a 7-day rule. If something hurts on my body, I give it a week. If it still hurts after a week, then I go get it checked out. The problem with this testicle pain is it would last like a day or two, then stop, and then come back a week later, but I'd start my clock over again. And I just realized this year, I've been doing that since 2018. And I told my wife in February about this, and she goes, oh my God, you're getting that checked out immediately. So I tried. I tried to get health insurance in February. And yeah, did you know you can't? Did you know it's unavailable in February? I had no idea. I called like an idiot. I was like, one health insurance, please. And there's a lady on the other end like, what? You missed it. And I was like, the health insurance? She's like, yeah, it's over. And I'm like, why'd you even answer the phone? Like, shouldn't this be a recording? Why are you making me feel worse about this? And she's like, yeah, you didn't see the commercials? It's open enrollment. Open enrollment is from Thanksgiving till the end of January. You missed it. Didn't you see the commercials? And I'm like, yeah, I saw the commercials, but I didn't know there was a hard end to the open enrollment. I thought it was an advertisement. You know, because you know who else has open enrollment specials in the beginning of every new year? Gyms. Every gym in the country around the beginning of the new year is like, hey, $10 a month, get your big asses in here. You can hop on the elliptical. That doesn't mean you can't sign up in February. It just means it's going to cost a little more. And she's like, yeah, well, we meant it. I was like, all right, so what do we do now? She's like, I don't know, call back in November. And I'm like, but my testicle hurts now. And she goes, you don't get it. I'm like, I don't think you get it. I got a dull toothache in my left nut. We got to figure this out. And she goes, you don't get it. And I'm like, you know what? I guess I don't get it. I don't get it. Why? Why are we treating health insurance like a pumpkin spice latte? Make it year round. Yeah. Listen. I thought it was a solid point too, but it didn't help. And I got off the phone and I had to tell Emma, I was like, they're not gonna help me. And she just goes, oh my God, what if they have to cut it off? And I was like, why would that be the first thing you say? Why would you even put that in the air when you know I can't make an appointment for 9 more months? Why would you even put that germ of an idea in the atmosphere? And she's like, I don't know, what if? And I'm like, I don't know, what if? And she's like, do they put like a fake one in there? And I'm like, I don't know. I hope they would do that. I hope they wouldn't just let me leave with half a grocery bag. That'd be messed up. I'm pretty sure I'd speak up. I'd be like, come on, man. Just throw a couple quarters in there. Help me out. Don't let me live the rest of my life slightly off balance. Figure this out. And I remember she had a moment. She's like, you know what? I don't care if you have health insurance or not. You're getting this checked out, and you're just going to pay for it out of pocket like an American. And she said it like that because she's from Canada. She's trying to rub it in a little. I'm like, well, what if it's really expensive? And she goes, then you're going to go into debt like an American. So she found me a urologist in Brooklyn, and I'm not making this up for the sake of comedy, but my urologist's name was Dr. Zoltan. And you should have seen the look on my wife's face when she showed me the confirmation email. She's like, and I was like, what have you done? She's like, isn't this great? I'm like, not really. And she's like, why not? I'm like, well, you just took an already awkward conversation and you made it a little weirder. And she's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, what do you mean, what do I mean? How do you think this is gonna go down? You think we're just gonna walk into the room and Zoltan! Hungarian! Ah! Anyway, here are my genitals. It's not how this is gonna go. It's gonna be weird. And she goes, it won't be weird. And I was like, I promise you, it's gonna be a little weird. And so I remember we're there in the waiting room. I'm waiting to get my name called. And Emma goes, hey, when you get your name called, do you want me to go in there with you? And I'm like, no. Sit out here and wait for me. And she goes, why? Why don't you want me to go in there? And I was like, what? Because it's weird. She goes, no, it's not. You came in with me for my wrist thing. And I was like, yeah, your pants stayed on for the wrist thing. And she goes, so? Why can't I go in there? Don't be immature. I'm like, because it's weird. It's going to make me feel like a little boy going in there with my mother, who's going to stand off to the side and during the exam go, don't forget to tell him about your testicles, sweetheart. And I'm just going to be over there like, thanks, Mom. I didn't forget why we came. And she's like, I would never do that. And she brought up a good point. She goes, you actually need me in there. Because you don't have a great memory. You're going to forget what that guy says, and I'm going to be a second pair of ears in there. And I'll be like, that's actually a good point. All right, you can come in, but don't say anything. She goes, I don't say anything. I'm just going to be their ears. I was like, all right, cool. So we're in there. We're waiting for Dr. Zoltan. He eventually comes in. We have our Zoltan, Spider-Man pointing at Spider-Man moment, you know? And I'm just, Hungarian. And he's very nice. He's like, welcome to New York. Hope you're enjoying the city. He's making small talk. He's like, what do you do for a living? I'm like, oh, I'm a comedian. And his eyes lit up a little bit. He's like, whoa, like a stand-up comedian? I'm like, yeah. He's like, that's what you do for a living? I'm like, uh-huh. He's like, that is so cool. And I'm like, you're a doctor. Like, you're doing way good. Like, you're doing amazing. And then, I'm not making this up either, he proceeds to pitch me a TV show idea. Right then and there, he's like, I got an idea for a TV show. And I'm like, what? Yeah, this later. Right now, this. And his idea wasn't bad. It wasn't a bad idea. He's like, wouldn't it be cool if there's a show where you could hear the inner monologues of doctors and patients and then hear what they're actually saying to each other? I'm like, that's funny. I'd watch that. And he's like, right? And I'm like, hell yeah. He's like, right? And I'm like, yeah. And I could tell he wanted something more out of me, so I had to break it to him. I'm like, I'm sorry, Dr. Zoltan, I'm not famous enough to help you with this idea. And I could tell it bummed him out a little bit. He was like, oh, yeah. All right. That's fine. Go ahead and take your pants off. And that was so weird. I've never taken my pants off after disappointing somebody. Like, that's never been the order of events. I've never had someone go, and I'm like, well? And so we're already off to this weird start. So I got my pants down by my ankles. I'm in a good power stance. Feet shoulder width apart, knees slightly bent, ready for anything. And Emma's behind me. She's kind of got a rough view. And doctor's in front of me, worse view. And he's down there giving me the exam. He's just kind of feeling around. He's not milking me, but this is what he was doing. And he's saying all these doctor words that don't mean anything to me. He's just down there muttering. He's like, oh yeah, oh yeah. Oh yeah, you got a swollen vernacular over there. Oh yeah, that's a swollen vernacular over there. Yep, we got 2 swollen vernaculars. Yeah, and for the record, he's not saying vernacular. It's just the closest I have in my vocabulary to whatever he is saying is vernacular. And the problem is he's just not saying the thing I want him to say. Like, my fear is that it might be cancer, but he's not saying that. He won't answer that. He's just down there like, oh yeah, got a couple vernaculars over here. Got some vernaculars over here. Oh yeah, couple vernaculars. And I remember I had to cut him off. I'm like, Dr. Zoltan. He's like, huh? And I'm like, is it cancer? He's like, oh, no. And I'm like, good, get off me. Like, I don't care what it is now. I was just scared that it was that. Get the hell off of me, Dr. Zoltan. There's money for you on the nightstand. Get off of me. I didn't actually say that part, but I would have been sick, man. And he was like, listen, I'm 95% sure it's not cancer, but we got to make 100% sure. So I got to set you up with a blood test and an ultrasound. And that's when I found out that they even do an ultrasound on that. I had no clue. I thought that was for looking at babies, but apparently they do it on other things. And I showed up that morning, and the ultrasound tech, unfortunately, kind of resembled my mother. Which, if there was anything I could have asked for that day, is please don't look like my mother. And there she was, cheekbones and all. And she was very nice, very professional, but it's awkward. I'm there on this table. It's in the morning. It's cold. There's bright lights. I got my pants down by my ankles. I'm just laying on this bed. She squirts this ultrasound jelly on my situation, and then she's just rubbing a wand on it. And I'm just laying there going, where the hell do I put my arms? You know? I had never thought so hard of where do arms go right now. Because you can't be too relaxed, right? You can't just be like... Like, that's uncomfortable for everybody. You can't just be too... And you also can't go behind the head. You can't just... Woo! Definitely can't do that. So I went with, like, a dead cockroach approach. I just... And she's just down there. And I know for a fact ultrasound techs can tell what's good and bad on the screen. I know that. Like, because otherwise, why would they give them a screen, right? Like, if they don't know if it's good or bad, just have them, well, I don't know what's going to happen. Hopefully this means something to somebody. Because I asked her, I'm like, how are things looking? And she goes, oh, I'm not allowed to say. That's out of my jurisdiction. And I was like, really? She's like, yeah, the doctor will call you. And I'm like, well, can you give me a hint? And she goes, no, I really can't say anything. I'm like, you don't have to use your words. Just give me a look, you know? Just like a... Or a... Like, just... Something so I'm not in my head, you know, until I get this phone call. And she goes, I really can't say anything. You'll find out. The doctor will call you in 2 days. So I had 2 days to be in my head, which is a horrible place to be. 2 days to just be in my head going, what if what he thought was a vernacular was something else? And so the day finally came. Dr. Zoltan called me. We had our moment. Yeah, Zoltan. Yeah, this is Zoltan. And then I just cut him off. I'm like, hey, man, just tell me, is it cancer? And he goes, it's not cancer. Stop thinking that. And I'm like, thank God. And I was like, all right, so what is it? He's like, well, you have 2 swollen vernaculars going to both of your testicles. And he's like, I think that's what's causing you your pain. And I was like, all right, so what can we do about it? And he's like, I don't know. He's like, I think you could use more support. And I was like, what? And he's like, tighter underwear. And I'm like, that's your treatment? You went to school for a decade? And you have like hundreds of thousands of student loan debt? And you just called me and you're like, yeah, Fruit of a Loom ought to do it. And he's like, yeah, I think it might help. And I'm like, all right, you do realize I'm never getting anything checked out ever again, right? And he's like, why do you say that? I'm like, well, I just spent $2,500 to find out $7 could have fixed this issue. Like, if anything's ever wrong with my body, I'm gonna assume my clothes are too loose. That's the problem. Oh no, I don't get migraine headaches. I need a tighter beanie. That's the issue. Hug my cranium. I don't know. So it was good. It was a big year. Got married, moved to New York, didn't get thank you. One person? No. It was a big year. We did a lot of traveling. I think that was my favorite part of the last 12 months. Because normally I only travel to do comedy. Like, if there's not a microphone and a check waiting for me, I just don't go there. You know? If anyone's ever been like, have you ever been to, huh? And I'm like, no. And I probably won't until they get comedy going there. But my wife likes to travel, so we've been traveling. Went to Italy, obviously, for the wedding. That was great. Went to Asia. Last November, we spent 2 weeks in Asia. We spent a week in Bangkok, Thailand, and a week in Bali, which is amazing. We flew 32 hours for me to find out I don't really like Thai food. What a weird way to find that out, right? Right to the source. I was so shocked because I thought I loved Thai food. I love Thai food here in the United States. I have it all the time. Tom Kha soup, coconut milk soup, that's my favorite soup. Love that. Penang curry, that's my favorite curry. Of course, pad thai noodle, the classic, I'll have that any day of the week. And then I flew all the way to Thailand, I had it there, and I was like, oh, you're making it wrong. Like this, where can I get it authentic? Where do you guys make it authentic? I wish I was making that up. That's exactly who I was over there. Like, in my head, I thought I was gonna be like an Anthony Bourdain type, wearing cool clothes and trying everyone's food, making friends, drinking beer. No, I was just an American in a Hawaiian shirt going, ugh. You guys have any Pepto? And I needed it too, man. I had 2 weeks of diarrhea. Yeah, consecutive, which I broke my old record by a full week. And it was a record I was never trying to break. I was happy where that banner stood in the stands, but I had to come out of retirement, show these kids what's up. Had to throw on the gym shorts one more time. And it hurt too, man. After the third day, my wife, hypochondriac, she's like, you should go to the hospital. And I'm like, I will die with dignity in this hotel room before I ever go to a hospital. Like, really? Where emergencies happen? I'm supposed to go in? It won't stop. No. You don't go to the hospital for that, all right? Drink some Gatorade, cancel some plans. That's what you do. You're like, yeah, we're not doing that tour today. That's a lot of stairs. Nope. But she's like, no, I'm pretty sure you're supposed to seek medical attention after 3 days of the runs. I'm like, that's impossible. She goes, no, for real. I go, no way. She goes, Google it. So I Googled how many days of the runs until you should seek professional medical attention, and it came up. It said 3 days. Isn't that the worst thing that could ever happen in a relationship? You have a disagreement, and one of you goes, Google it, and Google's like, yep, they were right. That's the worst thing that could ever happen. But the great thing about Google is if you don't like the first answer that comes up, you can keep scrolling until you find the answer you wanted to find all along. Because I'm Googling and she's like, what's it say? I'm like, it's really vague, baby. I don't know. And I'm just looking. I'm seeing 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. Let's go. And then I found the answer I wanted to find. It was in the comments section of a Reddit forum. It was just one guy who's like, I've had it my whole life. And I'm like, hell yeah, dude. Look at this hero, baby. 48 years young. He's doing all right. A little dehydrated, but he's kicking. It was such a lame trip. I remember my favorite part of the entire trip to Thailand is the bathroom we had in the hotel, because we stayed at a high-end hotel, and this hotel had a Japanese toilet in there. I don't know if you guys know about Japanese toilets. You're already clapping. You have a look of satisfaction already on your face. For the rest of you that don't know, these toilets, they do all the work for you. You don't even look back there, all right? You just worry about front-of-house business. They take care of back-of-house for you. And I didn't know that. I was in a rush. I just sat down, and while I'm sitting there, I noticed there's all these buttons on the wall, and each button has a drawing of what's going to happen back there if you happen to hit one of these buttons. And listen, I'm a human being with natural curiosities. And I was like, oh, hell yeah. But I'm also a little tepid. I'm a little scared sometimes. And I'm like, oh, I don't know, It's like, what if I love it? Like, what if there's no going back? You know what I mean? What if I miss my flight home because I'm stuck in this hotel room just like, another round, Johnny. Like, you know what I mean? What if this changes my outlook on life? And then I noticed they had a second set of buttons. Underneath, it was numbers 1 to 10. It was how hard you wanted the water pressure back there. So I started at a 1, right? At a 1. It's my first day at the gym. I'm not maxing out. I'm just hopping on the elliptical for 10 minutes, getting a little sweat on the brow. That's all I'm looking to do. So I started at a 1, and I'm like, well, hello. And about 90 seconds later, I had that thing pegged out, and I'm like, yeah! Game changer, dude. I've never had a toilet change my mood before. Like, I sat down in a bad mood. I got up in an amazing mood. Like, colors were brighter. I was more optimistic. I felt taller. God, I love that toilet. Sometimes I would sit on it when I didn't even need to go. I just treated it like an afternoon coffee, like a Starbucks at 3 p.m. just to get through the rest of your day. I'd sit down, yeah. And I'd bounce off. Let's go look at some more temples, baby. Daddy's got a second wind. God. Amazing toilet. Amazing toilet. The aim on that thing, just spot on. I just sat down. This thing didn't even know my name. It was like, there you are, right there. It's like, whoa, who invented you? An engineer, probably. Someone who's great at math. What was that equation? A squared plus B squared equals bullseye. We got him, fellas. Send that to the Smithsonian. We're set. I loved it. Then you hit this other button and they dry you off. You were no part of this process. You hit this other button and a hot breath would come out and just, I didn't know I needed that in my life until I had it. And I'm like, well, how do you go back now? How do you go back to toilet paper after you've had that? How do you do that? How do you go back to Charmin after you've had hot breath on your barn doors? You can't. That's who you are now. You're a hot breath guy. Amazing. It's crazy what people can come up with. Like, a human being invented that. A person just like me or you had that idea. And not only did they have that idea, they had the courage to tell someone else about it. Right? Because anyone can have an idea, but it takes a little something extra to look a stranger in the eyes and go, hey, you got a minute? I'd like to show you some schematics. Like, this dude, he had to invent it, and then he had to go get capital. He invented it, then he's got to start a business. He probably had to walk into like a Shark Tank type situation, probably with a crude prototype. He made it home, just like a toilet seat with like a water gun and a hairdryer glued to it. He had to walk in there all confident. Hi, my name is Phil. I'm looking for $100,000 for 10% stake in, Mark Cuban, can you just take your pants off for a second? This is easier to demonstrate than it is to articulate. I've been up here long enough that you get it. I grew up without a dad, right? Like that. The stories that piece together where you're like, oh yeah, he was raised by a single mom, for sure. For sure. I was hugged and kissed a lot, too. And most little boys were like, no more kisses. And I was like, oh, actually, you missed a cheek. That's who I was. I love the love, man. So I grew up without a dad. My wife grew up with both parents. I don't know if you've heard of that. Every once in a while, two people start a family, and they're just like, let's keep going. What would have happened if we just kept it going, So she's fascinated by the fact that I never met my dad. And she's like, so you never met him? I'm like, no, I never met him. He left when I was a baby. She's like, do you ever think about him? I'm like, no, not really. Never met him, so I don't really think about him. She goes, would you ever want to meet him? And I'm like, good God, no. And she goes, why not? I'm like, because it'd be weird. We don't have anything to talk about. We don't have a relationship to reference, so it would be awkward. And it would be like a first date. And on top of that, he lives in Budapest, Hungary, and only speaks Hungarian. And I only speak English. So if we hung out, it would be like a 90-day fiance date where I'm speaking into my phone like, why'd you leave? I'd rather not do that at an Applebee's, you know? And she's like, I get it now. And I'm like, I figured. So I grew up without a dad, which, if there's anyone in here that grew up without a dad, you might be able to connect to this next chunk. It's just, you naturally find father figures when you grow up. That's just what happens. They just pop up in life. Like, I remember we moved from Hungary, and when we first moved to the United States, my first father figure was on TV. It was Mr. Rogers. Yeah. That guy was great. I love me some Mr. Rogers. He taught me how to speak English, because he spoke slowly, he had puppets, kept my attention, he had a stoplight in his living room for some reason. I was like, this guy's pretty rock and roll. I like me some Mr. Rogers. Where do you get a stoplight? Did you steal that from the city? Where does that even come from? And so I loved Mr. Rogers. I remember he had like indoor-outdoor shoes, remember that? He took off his outdoor shoes, put on his indoor shoes, took off his outdoor cardigan, put on his indoor cardigan. And I grew up kind of poor, so I was like, man, Mr. Rogers is loaded. Like, he's doing all right, you know? I want to be like Mr. Rogers when I grow up. So that was my first father figure, was Mr. Rogers. My second father figure, also on TV a few years later, was a professional wrestler by the name of the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels. Yeah, cool. A couple people know who he is. Everybody else, I'll explain. Shawn Michaels played like a male stripper type of character. He had like long hair and bushy chest hair, and he sang his own theme song, and the lyrics were, I'm just a sexy boy. And he would sing that over and over again while taking off bedazzled assless chaps. And I was 10 years old, like, hell yeah, dude. This guy rocks. So those were my first two father figures. It was Mr. Rogers and the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels. And sometimes when you're a little boy, you're in situations where you're like, what would a man do in this situation? And I would think of those two, and I just kind of blend them, you know? I was honestly both of those men. Like, I wore cardigans, but I took them off sexy. You know what I mean? Let them slide down the shoulders. My third father figure wasn't a famous person at all. He was just a regular guy. He was my best friend Jason's dad, Daryl Jones. Daryl Jones, yeah, good dude. Daryl Jones ran a mechanic shop in town, and now I worked at this mechanic shop. This was the last real day job I had before I got to do comedy full time, and I didn't work on the cars. I wasn't allowed in there. I worked in the office. I did the computers, I did the bookkeeping, I wrote invoices for customers. Like, he taught me, he's like, hey, if anyone ever pays in cash, you delete that invoice, and we don't tell the government about it. And I'm like, hell yeah, Mr. Jones, you know? That's how I run my business to this day. So I've kept that alive. And Daryl Jones, man, he was a character, dude. I don't know how to describe him. He was a big, heavy-set dude, maybe 300 pounds, big, bushy, white beard. He smoked Marlboro Ultralight 100s. His ass crack hung out when he worked, which isn't that weird. Everyone's ass crack sticks out when you work, right? Like the top quarter, maybe the top third if it's an extra tough day. But his whole ass would hang out. Like he'd be bent over working on a car, and I'd be like, I think I see the back of his knees. I think that's everything you can see, and then some. And he was also kind of oblivious to how much it stuck out, because I remember one time at lunch he told a story. He was like, oh yeah, back in community college, I was getting my diesel mechanic license, and I was bent over working. He's like, I don't know if you guys noticed, but my ass crack sticks out a little bit when I work. And we were all like, what? Yours? Yeah, a touch, maybe. And he's like, yeah, some joker came by and poured soda pop down my ass crack. And we were like, oh no, what'd you do? He's like, well, I turned around to get him, but he ran off. So I just grabbed a torque wrench and I threw it at him. And I hit him between the shoulder blades and knocked him unconscious. And we were like, oh my God. And he was just over there like, I thought that was the funniest thing that had ever been told. And we were like, is that guy all right? He's like, I don't know. It was like a classic redneck story. You hear something that ends in what sounds like a murder, and then they just trail off at the end. You're like, what happened next? I don't know. I had to get to second period. I was carrying a full schedule. You know? This dude was an interesting character, man. He had all these southern sayings, even though he wasn't from the South. He was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which he claimed was the South. But he was so intimidating, nobody ever corrected him. Like, people would ask him, like, where are you from? He's like, the South. And they're like, where specifically? He's like, Albuquerque. And everyone's like, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, hell yeah. That Mason-Dixon line runs all the way across. Everybody knows that. Straight to Hawaii. Splits the islands. Just intimidating. And he had all these Southern sayings that didn't make any sense, but they were terrifying. Like, if we ever had an issue with a customer, he'd be like, get him in the shop. I'll show him how the cow eats the corn. And I was like, what the hell does that mean? How the hell do cows eat corn? And I don't want him to show me, you know? He was a wild dude, man. He's the only guy I've ever met that was banned from Best Buy. He was banned from our neighborhood Best Buy because he choked a kid that worked there. Because he was trying to buy his wife a Christmas gift, and somehow the conversation in the electronics department went sideways. And he said the kid said something rude to him, so he started throttling him, as you do. And while he was choking him, he goes, in a second, I'm gonna turn you loose. What a great thing to say, by the way. If I ever have the opportunity to choke somebody, I'm gonna go, in a second, I'm gonna turn you loose. But he goes, I want that damn memory card on this counter. And he throws him back, and the kid's like, I'm calling security. And he goes, you better call all of them, because I'm fixing to dance. He was like a poet of violence. Like, his words were beautiful, but terrifying. Like, if Charles Bukowski fought in the UFC or something, you're like, what? Mesmerizing. And I know at this point, you're like, this guy was a father figure in your life? He was. Like, listen, he was rough around the edges. A lot of people either loved him or hated him. And the people that hated him were probably assaulted by him. And that's fair. You know, if someone beats you up, you're probably gonna not like that guy. But that's not the relationship I had with him. Like, he treated me like an honorary Jones. He treated me like a son. He treated me like he's like a dad to me. He never said I love you, just like a real dad. But it was the way he treated me that I could tell how he felt. Like, he knew this was my dream. He knew I wanted to do comedy, and he knew this job was just paying the bills. So he always let me leave to go do my shows, and he's like, your job's here when you come back to it. And I remember one time I had to leave work early to do a show downtown San Diego at the Hard Rock Hotel. It's a private event. I go down there, and I bomb my ass off. Like, I just have the worst set of my entire life. I tried really hard, but it just wasn't in the cards for the Z-Man that night. And maybe because I was calling myself the Z-Man that night. If I'm being honest, it might have rubbed some people the wrong way. But I bombed so bad that at the end of the show, they didn't want to pay me the $400 that they owed me. Yeah, and I remember being demoralized that I bombed so bad, but I still argued for the check. I was like, I think you still have to pay me if I suck. And they begged to differ. So I left without getting paid. And I remember that Monday, I went back to the shop, and I walk in, and Daryl's sitting there smoking his Marlboro Ultralight 100s. He's puffing away, and he's like, how was your little show on Friday? And I'm like, not good. I ate my ass for an hour. And he laughed a little. He's like, that's probably going to happen a few more times, I would assume. And he's like, I'm sure it wasn't as bad as you thought it was. And I'm like, oh, no, it's worse than you're thinking. I bombed so bad, they didn't pay me the $400 that they owed me. And he's like, really? And I'm like, uh-huh. He's like, they should still pay you if you suck. And I'm like, that's what I said. And I'll never forget this. He took a long puff of his cigarette. He's like, all right, well, give them another call. But if they don't find your check by Friday, maybe you and I close the shop early. And we mosey on down to the Hard Rock Hotel. We start tipping things over in the lobby until they find your check. And I could tell by the look in his eyes, he was serious, all right? Not only was he serious, he was kind of excited at the opportunity. He had a twinkle in his eye, like, I would love to vandalize the lobby of a high-end hotel. And I'm on the other side going, oh my God, I hope they find my check. Because I'm gonna be an accomplice. And I was just so blown away, like this man was ready to close his business for an entire day, drive an hour downtown to vandalize the lobby of a high-end hotel so I could get my check. And I was like, this is the love from a dad I've been looking for my entire life. That's what dads are for. That's exactly what dads are for. Dads are there to commit a felony so you can get the check for the dream that you suck at. And I was just blown away, man. I was like, man, so he stuck with me. And Daryl Jones isn't around anymore. He passed away in 2019. He needed a heart transplant, and they wouldn't give him one. And probably for the safety of the community, I often wonder how many ass kickings didn't happen because they didn't give him a new ticker, you know? But I remember I went to go visit him, and I came on like the worst day. I came on the day that they told him they're not going to give him a new heart. And so I didn't know that showing up. Showing up, I was like, oh, I'll tell some stories from the road. At the time, I was doing comedy full time. I'm like, he might giggle at this or whatever. And I showed up, and then I found out that they just told him he's not getting a heart. So I'm just sitting in this room with his son and him, and I'd never been with someone that was told they were going to die. So we were just sitting there. It was pretty quiet. And then the priest comes by. I don't know if you know that, but at the hospital, they got a priest that will talk to you if you're about to go. And this priest comes in, and he's like, hey, I know you got some bad news. Do you want me to sit and talk with you a little bit? And Daryl was just himself, even at the end. He's like, listen, man, I don't really believe in any of that stuff. But in case it's true, just put a good word in for me. And I was blown away. I'm like, man, you're going to be yourself even now? That is awesome. And Daryl Jones is in there. That's my third father figure. He doesn't come out much, but he's in there. You know what I mean? Like, he's in there. He was in there. He was in there when I was at the airport and I wanted that bottle of water. He was in there when that lady's like, oh, if you're paying with credit card, you got to go do self-checkout. I can only take cash. Inside, I was like, dude, the cow eats the corn. Like, that's what I felt on the inside. But what came out was Mr. Rogers. What came out was like, well, have a lovely day. And then I stole the water, and as I'm boarding the plane, I'm just dancing like Shawn Michaels all the way down the jetway. And those are the men that made me up. Thank you guys so much for coming out. Good night, everybody. Thank you for the love. Appreciate it.